Welcome to Episode 6 of the School Transformation Podcast.
Let's make today the day that will transform your work, your health, and your life. You'll learn how at the School of Transformation. Welcome to the School of Transformation, where each week you'll gain insights from top performers and experts that will offer you their advice and strategies that can help you reach higher levels of performance. And now, your host, Bob Choat.
Welcome, everybody, to Episode 6 of the School Transformation Podcast. I have a very special guest. We've been friends for 9 years now. It was very interesting on how I met this person. That's a whole other story. I'm not going to get into that because I plan on having him come back. Now, this guy, like I said, he's been a friend, yet he has so much more. And let me tell you a little bit about Jason Scott Johnson. Jason, since he was young, he's had this passion for fitness. And I remember him telling me the story of how his dad got him involved with buying all this gym equipment. And again, that's another story in of itself. Jason loves to challenge himself. He continues to do that. I've known him for years, and he is absolutely the person who challenged himself in mind, body, and spirit. He loves to inspire others, not only to help them become fitter, to helping them realize their dreams and what they can truly become. And he also enjoys helping others surprise themselves with new levels of achievement and higher qualities of life. Jason is now sharing his real-life, real-world experience so that readers can benefit from the lessons he learned without having to go through all the events. Jason's background, like me, he was in the Marines. He traveled all over the world during that time. He was part of the Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team called FAST. He was part of 2nd Force Recon. Then after he left the Marine Corps, he focused on kickboxing and wrestling. I believe his kickboxing areas, he ended up winning the amateur IKF kickboxing championship. He would later go on to win the IFMA World Super Heavyweight Amateur Kickboxing title. And then he was also the IKF Amateur of the Year, ranked 7th in the world as a professional. Jason has since then been focused on fitness. He's certified through National Academy of Sports Medicine. He's been a natural bodybuilder and champion and fitness model, as well as a fat loss expert. He's worked with Hollywood celebrities, stars. He's worked with older people, even elite athletes. On another side, he continues to compete. He's competed in Ironman triathlon. He's been an adventure racer. He's been in magazines, not only modeling, he's been a writer, such as Muscle and Fitness, Ironman, Men's Fitness, and so much more. I mean, there's so much that I can tell you about him and his whole background. I'm not going to go through everything. Jason's story and through his whole transformations throughout his whole life will amaze you. So, Jason, I want to thank you for being here as a guest on the School Transformation Podcast.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure, Bob. And I love what you're doing to help inspire others. And I truly appreciate that introduction. Wow. All right.
Okay, Jason, I'm going to ask you, and this is what I ask pretty much every guest, what's your favorite quote and why?
Oh, I have so many favorite quotes. One that really sticks out comes from one of my most inspirational leaders. As you think, so shall you become. And that is by Bruce Lee.
Why does it inspire you?
Everything in life, everything that you do, everything that you're able to do, the way that you perceive the world, the actions that you take, the feelings that you feel are all based on what you're thinking.
Yes.
You know, what are you thinking what thoughts are you entertaining? What thoughts are you giving energy to? I mean, that can make an amazing experience, or it can make a much less than amazing experience. The power is in the mind. It's in the thoughts that you think. And more importantly, the thoughts that you entertain, the thoughts that you give energy to, the thoughts that you pay attention to. I am learning more and more and more about how the limitations that people think they have,
yes,
the illusions of the limitations are nothing more than the limited thinking that they have. I am currently working on stretching my thoughts, which stretches my beliefs, which stretches my ability to grow as a person and, of course, to help others.
And this is something you've done time and time and time again. And I'm going to get into asking, what is your greatest transformation or transformations? Because I know, as we discussed, that you've had multiple transformations throughout your life, and each one was there for a purpose. So let's go ahead and get into that and starting
Sure.
from where you want to start.
Sure, if you don't mind, if I can start, way back at the roots, that'd be great. When I was a kid,
Sure.
one of my first transformations happened when I was very young. I was right around 7 years old, and my mom took me to my first wellness conference. That's where I met Richard Simmons, and I learned all about the beauty of the body and health and nutrition and exercise. Up until that point, I was just kind of a normal kid in, the farm country of Wisconsin. A seed was planted. And then shortly after that, you had already mentioned, my dad started to take me for runs out in the morning down the country roads with cornfields on my left and right. Some of the best memories. Many times we'd get up when it was still dark out and go run. I cherish those memories. I just started to fall in love with fitness. My dad taught me how to lift weights, how to do circuit training. He taught me how to drink protein shakes. Shortly after, I had set a goal for myself. I wanted to run 10 miles by the time I was 10 years old. I basically geared up my training. It was right around when Rocky IV came out, if I could date myself, that I ran 10 miles and I was 10 years old. And that was kind of a monumental experience for me. I'm like, wow, I can set my mind to something and achieve it. And that taught me a very important lesson. And that was the joy of growth. The joy of setting a goal and then hitting it. I was only 10 years old.
Jason, regarding that, because that's very interesting, not very many young people will even have the mindset of setting a goal, of having that perception. What led you to set that goal?
That's a very good question. What did it? I think it was a combination of, I started running. I started running with my dad. And then shortly after that, I started to really stretch to see how far I could run. And I noticed that the further that I ran, the better that I felt. I'm like, wow, this really feels good. I don't know where all of the goal setting came. I just naturally set a goal, and I thought 10 miles just sounded great to me. It was in the wintertime in Wisconsin. It wasn't the most ideal running situations, but I did it. It was phenomenal. Maybe I was inspired by some of the athletes on TV. I don't know exactly what led to it. I just know that my memories, I just loved every second of it. Every time that I ran further, it just felt better and better and better.
Okay.
And I thought there's no limit. Yeah.
Yes. Going after that, what was the next transformation?
Okay, so a little thing that I did is I set another goal. I was a new kid at a school, didn't know anyone, wasn't very confident. I was more introverted at the time. There was one thing that I knew how to do. I knew how to run.
Yes.
I set a goal to break the record for the mile, just for fun. I basically calculated on what I would need to run every lap on my little Ironman watch at the time. I still wear an Ironman watch. I was 11 at the time. Yeah, I had experienced a birthday, but it took me 2 tries, but I broke the record and they announced it all over the school. And then before I knew it, I was known as the really fast kid. And that was better than being nobody, that's for sure.
Which brings me to another question regarding that. It's interesting because I mentioned asking about the goals. Now at 11 years old, not only did you have the goal, you were able to break down what you needed to break the record. And that's also unusual for somebody at that age.
Yeah, I think I was pretty analytical as well. I was kind of like a scientist.
Scientist. Good.
Yeah, kind of running experiments to see what I could do. I guess I was combining the scientific viewpoint with the passionate athlete. And I did keep a pretty playful attitude. I was still a kid at heart. So it wasn't like a make it or break it. It was something I really wanted. It wasn't like a do or die situation. I stayed playful about it.
Okay.
Moving on, let's see. After that, I had a pretty normal youth experience, played a lot of soccer and basketball, continued to run and lift weights and so forth. Then something happened. It was great. I had this ambition to play football. Now, at the time, I had been doing taekwondo and some other things that were kind of light contact, but this was something new. This was something, I was inspired a lot by watching the Green Bay Packers with my dad. I can tell you that for sure. I wanted to play football. It was a decision, did I want to do cross country or football? Cross country was the known. I knew I could run. But football, part of me wanted to get into that gridiron stuff.
Yes.
At a whopping 130 pounds, and that's fully clothed, I'm sure, I went out for football in high school. I got crushed in the beginning of two-a-days. My physical fitness was good, but I was just getting buried by people, either when I was trying to tackle them or when they were tackling me. And I was just beaten and bruised. I mean, I felt like I was being run over every day. I mean, literally I was. And then one day, Coach Wingfield at the time had us all take a knee, and he explained how in football you have to love to hit. That little shift in perspective basically changed everything for me. What I did from that point on was there was this little kid named Jimmy. He was probably about 5 pounds heavier than I was. He was a sophomore. I was a freshman. He would literally scream and run and hit people and just annihilate them, even though he was a good 50 pounds less. I mean, he was like Adam Sandler in The Waterboy, if you remember that. It was real. This dude was great. I kind of emulated what he did. I mean, minus the screaming. I fell in love with hitting. I'm like, this feels really good because it feels really good to hit. It sure hurts a lot less when you're focused on hitting and not being the one that's being hit,
It's interesting because you mentioned that he used to scream. Did you do the screaming as well?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a little bit. It was more, not as vocal and animated as him. Maybe a little bit of grunt action was going on.
So would it be something like in the martial arts? And I remember even as a kid doing the ki, and my mom would even teach me that. Would it be something like that warrior yell?
Absolutely, because that gives you extra protection and definitely gives you extra power in that final inch, or that I should say that initial hit gives you much, much more power from the core. So yeah, definitely.
Good. Excellent.
Yes, I actually had a very enjoyable football career. My sophomore year, we went undefeated. It was wonderful, 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 wonderful. After my freshman year, though, in high school, now that I had gained a new confidence in contact sports and getting to enjoy hitting and that, I had another ambition, and that was to go up to wrestling. Wrestling was something I had done in the backyard or on the playground. No real skill, just throwing each other around and how to do like a headlock and stuff like that. I wanted to do it for real. I was very blessed with getting the tutelage of Coach Youngbauer at the time. He took me from a little freshman all the way up through, I wrestled for 3 years because my junior year, I actually got hurt playing football and I sat out of wrestling. So my senior year, I remember one very, very important mindset tip that he gave all of us. He wrote it on the chalkboard. It was, without risk, there is no reward. I remember him writing that. I didn't know exactly what that meant. He told us how that applies to wrestling and how it applies to life, how you have to go for it. Because if you don't, everything's just going to sit still. I combined that with hard work, was actually fortunate enough to be led to winning a state title for the state of Wisconsin at 189 pounds my senior year. That, to me, it felt like I just won the Olympics. I mean, it was like, to me, state title for wrestling, but to me, it was monstrous.
Yes.
That gave me a little bit of a boost in confidence. And I realized, you had mentioned this before too, the beauty of just going for it and surprising yourself. I was surprised. I'm like, did I just win? Did this just really happen? But I surprised myself. I was like, holy cow, this is
and you
cool.
Did it because... Yeah, because Wisconsin and Ohio and Iowa, all those Midwestern states are known for wrestling. To be able to compete at that level against other wrestlers, that's pretty amazing.
Thank you. It was extremely rewarding. And I'm glad I took the risk, as Coach Youngbar would say.
Yes.
Shortly after my senior year, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. Oh, my goodness. I mean, all of the countless lessons and things that we learned just being a Marine. Some of those things only fellow Marines would understand. However, one thing that really sticks out that I still use today when the situation arises is I learned how to set aside preferences, how to set aside emotions and judgments, fears, how to even set aside doubt and just focus on the mission that needs to happen. I mean, it's the same thing if you need to jump out of a plane or a helicopter. It's the same thing if you need to stand up in front of thousands of people and do a speaking engagement. You have to set aside all that other stuff that usually comes from the ego, the fearful ego.
Absolutely, yes.
You just set it aside. You're like, thank you for bringing that up. Not right now. You're talking to your ego. You're like, we can talk about that later. And just focus on the mission. What is the mission? Speaking of thousands of people, What is my mission? To inspire them, to educate them. That is the mission. Put your attention on how you can help, how you can contribute, how you can get it done. I do the same thing in my workouts, when I'm doing an important workout or an important competition, anything. It's mission. It's normal to feel fatigue and fear and doubt and all those things. It's like, I'm just going to think about that later. Right now, I need to handle this. And the Marines, they teach you that real quick. You learn that real quick. I mean, it's like a sink or swim.
Yeah, even right when you get to boot camp, everybody is there with their own ego, their own looks and everything. Once your hair is, you're shaved, your civvies are like put away and everybody looks the same. Well, there can't be any ego because we're all the same.
Yep, exactly. I remember the first time I saw my reflection with a bald head. I'm like, who is the freak? Who's the freak I'm looking at? You know, and I had all these clothes that didn't fit because we had like no time to try anything on. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Good time. Good time. Yeah. So another thing that happened while I was in the Marines, I was still with the Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team. I was going through jump school. And you know this, Bob, that's an Army school in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Fort Benning.
Yep. I was on my way back to the barracks. A fellow Marine, a sergeant, and I had a great, very short conversation. He asked me what I was doing. I told him that I had orders to go back to the Fleet Marine Corps, to be a rifleman, basically to go back to the infantry, which that's what my orders stated I had to do. And he said, why don't you try out for Force Recon? I'm like, no, I was told that I'm too young. My rank isn't high enough. And plus I have orders to be a rifleman, to go back to Camp Pendleton and join the Fleet Marine Force. And he said, why don't you just talk to your company commander and have him write a letter to 2nd Force Recon and ask for at least an opportunity to take the indoc. And then the conversation was over. And then so I thought about that. And I'm like, and that just excited me so much because that was something I had wanted to do for so long. But now my confidence was at the point where I'm like, I think I could do this. I might as well try, right? As soon as I got back from school, I asked for it. They sent the letter. I got accepted. After several months of training my butt off, mm-hmm. I drove from Norfolk, Virginia to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I took the 2nd Force Recon indoc. That was definitely one of the best days of my life. It was one of the most challenging, gut-wrenching, sweaty, bruising, stressed out days of my life, but boy, it was one of the greatest.
Yeah, so here's the thing, Jason, before you go any further, explain to our audience about Force Recon in general and 2nd Force Recon.
Sure. Basically, our job we had many, many, many jobs in 2nd Force Recon. It's reconnaissance. It's going ahead of the infantry, gathering information. Basically, you have to be one of the elite because you work in very, very small teams and you gather information, and it is your mission to never be seen or heard for most of our missions. And then we also did direct action missions as well, which is very similar to what I was doing in the Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team, which includes a lot of close quarter battle, room clearing, things of that nature. But as you know, Bob, our job involves many, many things. Mm-hmm. And we need to be able to wear many hats. I mean, whether it's rappelling out of a helicopter, jumping out of planes, whether it's operating Zodiacs, hydrographic surveys, bridge reports, you name it. I mean, we had to do it all. And the biggest thing was we could not be seen or heard. We had to be swift, silent, and deadly. That is what we did, and that is what I wanted to do. I mean, deep down, ever since I heard of the Marines, and then I wanted to know, okay, who's the elite in the Marines? It was Recon. It was Recon Battalion, and then of course Recon Company or Force Recon. I just always wanted to do that. Why not? So that's quick, down and dirty explanation of Recon and
yes.
Force Recon.
And by the way, folks, in Force Recon, because I remember when they were disbanded, except for 2nd Force Recon, and then it was brought back in '84, all of Force Recon. 2nd Force Recon is considered the primary or the most elite of all the Force Recons. That just give you a perspective of the unit that Jason was with.
Thank you. After that, I served with 2nd Force Recon, had many, many, many rewarding experiences and growth experiences, if I may add. After a couple of years, I was honorably discharged. I went back to the civilian world where I felt a little out of place. I have to be honest. I went to college. I sat down next to a bunch of kids that just got out of high school. I was just chomping at the bit for something. I felt so out of place. I was bored. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
It sounded like you knew the mission, right? A new mission?
I needed a mission. So what happened right at the perfect time? I went with my best friend, Jeremy Ginther, to a night of fights in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Eagles Club rave. Oh, that was awesome. I went and I watched a full night of fighting, and it was set in like a gladiator coliseum venue. And I mean, the music, the lights, the smoke, the heavyweights just drilling each other. I mean, the roar of the crowd. I'm like, my first thing was, I want to learn that. I want to learn how to do that. What I did was I basically went to the gym where most of the victorious fighters came from and trained out of. And that was Duke Rufus's gym at the time.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, I started as a beginner and then an intermediate, and I just trained to learn. And then one day, it was a Friday after training, Duke came up to me and said, "Hey, I see that you're really committed. How would you like to join the fight team?" Oh, my goodness. It was like my whole life changed with that one question. If I was able, I would have done a backflip at that point. I was so excited. And I just couldn't wait. It was the next day. It was Saturday. I started training. I started training with the fight team. Boom. I mean, within, I think it was 6 weeks or so of training with the fight team, I had my first fight during Labor Day weekend. In Beloit, the same city that I started weight training in as a youngster, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, I had my first fight. I got knocked down within my first 30 seconds. I was fighting a fellow Marine, by the way.
Oh.
He had a lot of fights. It was my first fight. Yeah, I got knocked down. I mean, I remember standing up. I was seeing like 3 of the refs. Al Wickers. Yeah, Al Wickers was the ref. I remember it so well. And I was looking at him. I mean, that was the first time I really got my bell rung. There's no way I was going to stop. I knew that. So anyway, I continued the fight and I ended up winning. And then shortly after that, I had my second fight. And then I won a series of fights and I got invited to fight for the national championship actually it was Council Bluffs, Iowa. Yeah, I actually won that one. It was against the hometown favorite. What was his name? His name was Steve Badass Bass. That was his name. I can't believe I remembered all this. Yeah, that was a really cool experience actually, because it was after I had won that, the breakfast the next day, there was talk of a world championship in Bangkok, Thailand. And I just thought it was so far-fetched. Shortly after that, everything came together. I was invited to join the U.S. team to go to Bangkok and to fight for America. I mean, how awesome was that?
That is really awesome.
My training took on a whole new level of excitement and purpose. I mean, I was driven beyond. I also saw it as a kind of I've got nothing to lose. And I get a free trip to Thailand. Are you serious? This is awesome. Movies like Bloodsport and Kickboxer were very popular at the time. So I was just like all about living this fantasy of mine. Then I find myself a couple months later, I was in the final fight for the World Championship in Bangkok, Thailand. I was fighting an undefeated fighter. All of his fights were won by knockout. He was 6'5", about 240 pounds. So he had over 5 inches on me, and he had about 30 pounds on me, if I remember right. It was kilograms, so it was a little bit confusing. Yeah, he was undefeated. All of his fights were won by knockout. He was also a professional at the time. I was an amateur. I was a little bit intimidated, I'll be honest. I kind of went in there with an attitude of, let's see what I got. I have to tell you that my mind was not right when I stepped into that ring. It was not right. Oh. My legs were jello-y. My head was not in it because I was going with, let's see what I can do type of thing. And you know what? Those thoughts and that mindset put me on the canvas within 30 seconds because he hit me. I mean, more times than I could count. And before I knew it, I was down on the canvas. I don't know how many of the referees I saw when I tried to stand up.
Wow.
Yeah, the ref wanted to stop the fight because he thought it was a mismatch. And really, the only thing that was mismatched was his confidence level, my confidence level. Mm-hmm. That was the mismatch. Then all of a sudden, it was like he hit me so hard, I think he knocked the fear out of me is what happened. Because that whole ego thing.
Yes.
That whole fearful ego thing just went out the window. I had this thought of, I came too far to go down now. And that was the only thing that I thought. I just came too far to go down now. So my first goal at that time was just to finish that first round. I just wanted to make it through the first 3 minutes. And I did. I was cloudy. I was dizzy, rubbery, all that good stuff. But I made it. Mm-hmm. And then I survived the second round as well. But one thing happened. Towards the end of the second round, I changed my mindset to be even a little bit stronger. I focused on where can I hit him instead of how can I not be hit. I just focused on how can I hit him and not on how can I not be hit. It was a more positive, empowering mindset.
Yes.
And what happened was I found a weakness in his offense. Every time that he would go to throw his very, very heavy punches, I would drop a low kick onto his lead leg with my right leg. It was something I had learned as a beginning fighter. I learned that. Doug Rufus just drilled that into me. And I went way back to the basics. And that seemed to work just about every time. Round after round went by. I continued to land that shot. And I noticed he could not even put weight in that leg anymore, which gave me full freedom to be able to launch whatever offensive attack I wanted. And it was more of a mental thing. I just felt a lot of confidence just brewing. And the crowd was just going crazy because, I was the underdog. I started to launch my offense and continue to drop those low kicks. And then in the fourth round, I had damaged his leg enough to the point where he couldn't stand. He went down and could not get back up. I won by what they call a technical knockout.
Mm-hmm.
I was in disbelief for a long time. But everything changed at that point. I was like, holy cow. It was a surprise to me. I did not expect to win. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up on the canvas. I did have a change in mindset, which allowed me to stay on my feet. And then I continued to gather even a stronger mindset. And that allowed me to win. Those 30 minutes of that fight, however long it took, 30 minutes were some of the most instrumental 30 minutes of my life because it gave me life-changing lessons that I do my best to teach others. It opened up a whole new world for me as a fighter as well. I mean, I was hounded by reporters, and I was not used to all that. I mean, they wrote a very nice article, which I still have in the Thai newspaper. Anyway, I could go on and on about that.
Yeah, and in fact,
story
and I would like to really focus on that for a second here, is that when I mentioned earlier about the greatest transformation, I think in this case, the mindset shift that you had in a moment. So it wasn't like the mindset shift that you would have over an expanse of time. You had to do it immediately to shift, to change, to really focus from a losing mentality to a winner's mentality, that nothing was going to stop you kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And as I talk about transformation, that's a huge transformation.
Yes, it was a mindset change that came out of necessity. Put myself in a position. I definitely stepped into a new zone, and I put myself in a situation where that mindset had to shift, or else one of those things. Now I can go back to that. I guess a great lesson for all the listeners is no matter what you're going through in life or what your goals are, it could be business, fitness, health, whatever. Use the power of a positive winning mindset, like you said, in the moment. I mean, because at any moment, you can choose to take a winning mindset or you can choose to take a losing mindset. I mean, I don't know how else to put it.
Yes.
In the moment, you have the choice. It may not be the best mindset in the world, but you can always choose a better mindset. That is for sure. That is a great lesson, and I hope that people learn how to apply that in everything they're doing in life.
Thank you for listening to episode 6 of the School Transformation Podcast with Jason Scott Johnson. Episode 7 will continue the interview as he gets deeper into it and offering the tips that can help you to succeed, to really break through and have your greatest transformation. And don't forget to go to theschooltransformation.com and grab the 10-step ultimate self-confidence cheat sheet. Again, this has been Bob Choat, and come back here in a couple days and I will have episode 7. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the School of Transformation podcast. You can find us at bobchoat.com and make sure to grab the ultimate 10-step self-confidence cheat sheet.